Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Uh, Today we'll be reading the third warning of the 21st word. So, the past 2 weeks we've been going through the first two warnings. In our discussion about the first warning, we discussed what prayer means to you. Is it just muscle memory, a routine for you that you have to wake up and pray? Is it something that keeps you physically fit like yoga, or is it an integral part of your life? It has a deeper meaning to you and your lifestyle and how you view the world. So the first thing that was pointed out was that there is an exception for the prayer to end. And there shouldn't be such an expectation, because what prayer entails is that as long as you're in this world, you have to pray. One way to go about it could be by reforming your nafsul amara. And how nafsul amara was defined as the consciousness of a human being that controls its desires. So you could ask the question, why is it important to reform your nafs? So once you reform your nafs, you are purified, and then you can help others around you to purify themselves as well. So if you go into detail about the first warning, the writer tells us that we are not aware of the fact that we are going to die. And that is why we have become lazy. And if we were to realize that this is a brief life, we would spend every hour praying. So if someone told you like you only have like an hour, 2 days to live, you'll spend every moment of that praying. And there were a couple of other things that were mentioned as well, like the prayer could be the prescription to all of the problems that you face in your life, just as prescription for medicine, like that. And in the second warning, we discussed like the prayer is the like food for the soul, and how like human beings are chasing something. They're always trying to achieve some goal, but that goal is not going to satisfy their desires, but prayer is going to satisfy all of those desires. So we've covered first and second warning, so we'll read third warning. Dua, do you want to read it? Thank you.
Third warning. O my impatient soul, is it at all sensible to think today of past hardships of worship, difficulties of the prayers, and troubles of misfortune, and be distressed, and to imagine the future duties of worship, service of the prayers, and sorrows of disaster, and display impatience? In being thus impatient, you resemble a foolish commander, who, although the enemy's right flank joined his right flank and became fresh forces for him, sent a significant force to the right flank and weakened the center. Then, while there were no enemy soldiers on the left flank, he sent a large force there and gave them the order to fire. No forces then remained in the center, and the enemy understood this and attacked it and routed him. Yes, you resemble this, for the troubles of yesterday have today been transformed into mercy. The pain has gone while the pleasure remains. The difficulty has been turned into blessings, and the hardship into reward. In which case, you should not feel wearied at it, but make a serious effort to continue with the new eagerness and fresh enthusiasm. As for future days, they have not yet arrived, and to think of them now and feel bored and wearied is a lunacy like thinking today of future hunger and thirst and starting to shout and cry out. Since the truth is this, if you are reasonable, you will think of only today in connection with worship and say, I am spending 1 hour of it on an agreeable, pleasant, and elevated act of service, the reward for which is high and whose trouble is little. Then your bitter dispiritedness will be transformed into sweet endeavor. My impatient soul, you are charged with being patient in 3 respects. One is patience in worship, another is patience in refraining from sin, and a third is patience in the face of disaster. If you are intelligent, take as your guide the truth apparent in the comparison in this warning, in this third warning. Say in manly fashion, O most patient one, and shoulder the 3 sorts of patience. If you do not squander on the wrong way the forces of patience Almighty God has given you, they should be enough to withstand every difficulty and disaster. So hold out with those forces.
I think we can stop there. If we finish the third warning, then we can go on to the fourth warning. So any initial comments, thoughts, questions, anyone? If no one has a question, I have a question to Oh, okay.
I have like a very generic comment, especially about not the third one, but so far we studied first and the second one, maybe about them, if I'm allowed to.
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you. So there are the many different ways to read such a text, and like my personal belief is that we can benefit from all these different readings for sure. So one way is read it as a believer. You assume that you're already believing in something, and you know that you should pray, and you just need some encouragement. And read the text in this way, and it will help you. May Allah help us. But there's another way in reading of this text, is the author, while talking about all these different warnings and so on, kind of giving us a very like fundamental ideas, the concepts that we can think of as a human being, not as a believer. So, for instance, when we say with the first warning, if you read it as, if you knew that your life was so short, you would spend all your life with praying, for instance. Like a human being would say, like, where do you come up with this praying thing? Like, if my life was so short, I would try to make it, let's say, meaningful, maybe. That's a human level reading of the text. Or with the second one, if it read it as, you know, we need bread, water, and so on, but as a believer, my soul has a need for prayer as well, so I should satisfy it. And when I pray, I feel myself good, and I feel like it's satisfying some needs. I can read it that way, or I can read it as the author here, Imam Nursi, is trying to give us a definition of a human being, talking about all these different needs and so on. And when he talks about the needs, these are fundamental needs. Even according to author, at least this is his claim, that even an unbeliever, so-called unbeliever, believer, let's say, who identifies themselves like himself as an unbeliever, even he or she would say that, yes, I need what you are thinking, what you are talking about there. So when we read it in the second way, it actually helps us with what we assume to believe so far. And it's somehow like a support and give us a base to stand on. When I say, you know, I pray because, now I have a reason there, a real reason. Not that, you know, I'm a believer because I'm a Muslim, because it makes me feel good, because otherwise this happens or that happens. But I pray because this kid needs to, you know, to feed himself, and I have to feed myself as a human being. I can explain to myself, I can explain to others, believer or unbeliever. So that was the generic warning, maybe a comment, not warning, sorry. When we read these texts, especially these texts, like the old texts from Imam Nursi, my understanding is we would benefit more if we read it as a human being and try to build our belief, not come with our preloaded belief and then trying to understand the text, but rather let text to give us maybe a new understanding of what we used to believe.
I have a question to that. So, how do you go by that? Like, for example, if you're saying that if you open any chapter from Nursi's book, for example, 19th word, I don't know, like, for example, 18th word, is it for any normal human person? Because, for example, how we build up belief is that, like, how I believe it is to first kill all of the false ilahs and then go towards this. And, like, as we discussed in the previous discussion as well, like, we need to go through that first and then come to the prayer. But the way you're saying that is that we can read anything without coming to that conclusion. Can we do that? Like,
Without coming to what conclusion? Sorry, I missed that.
there
one.
is no God but God.
Oh, so my understanding, I might be mistaken, but my understanding is that the author is talking to people like yourself, for sure, who are familiar with this culture of Islam, culture of Quran, and I'm using the word culture on purpose, who are familiar with these, and then talking in the language that they would understand, and then building up their belief system gently, rather than saying that, oh, you think you are a believer? No, you are not. You have to do this, you have to do that. This is not the Quranic approach. Anyway, he says, great, you are a believer. Great, you are a Muslim. Let's talk about things that you may have some questions. And he is talking to someone like you, someone like me. He's not talking to a blank, let's say, human being. That's for sure. But whatever he talks, he starts from fundamentals. So it's always about La ilaha illallah, for sure. But even with, this text, like, for instance, he says, oh, my stomach, worshipping soul, every day you eat bread, drink water, breathe air. Do they cause you boredom? So this is something any human being can understand. You don't read this text with your cultural background. If you do, you can. Like, you can say that, oh yes, drink water, bread. The water is, you say, sacred. Bread is sacred. He's talking about these sacred things. And, we are so thankful to God who gives us bread, water. And then you skip this paragraph, like he's talking about the religion in general. You can read it that way. Or you can ask the question, why is he talking about like a water? Is prayer as fundamental as water? Is it like such a big need for me? That's what I mean. I might misunderstood your question, so if I didn't answer it, I apologize. But
I have maybe a basic question of can someone expound on the example that he's giving? The military example? Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Like, I get obviously from the first few sentences that he's talking about, as a human being, I have a specific resource of patience, perhaps, right? And that specific resource of patience is sufficient for what I need to do for that day. The allocation is just the right amount. But if I try to allocate it to tomorrow's obligations or yesterday's obligations, then that patience doesn't become enough for me, right? But I just wanted to better understand also the example that he's giving to reinforce this point.
So let's talk about this in terms of students, since everybody here is a professional student, like with at least undergrad means how many years? 18 years. Okay, 16 years or PhD and whatnot. So this is your field of expertise. author gives a lot of examples from army and whatnot, because in his time it was the World War One. Everybody were experts of war, so he was giving an example in a way that they would definitely understand. Still, we can relate to that too, but let me give you an example. So now it is time for, let's say, imagine a school, not Drexel type quarter, but more like a term based. So you have 2 midterms, 1 finals. Okay. So you are now at the second midterm time. And of course, the term is getting tougher, intenser, classes are getting intense and whatnot. So you are now that student who is supposed to be studying for the second midterms, but then you find your friend who is just frozen in the dorm, and you say, "What's up?" He says, "I messed up all the midterms, the first midterms." So, and then finals are coming, and that friend is paralyzed and not able to study for the midterm, which is tomorrow. So you tell your friend saying that, look, you are given a decent amount of resources, patience, and it's enough to focus on the midterm that you're supposed to be taking tomorrow. Just use your focus for that. The previous midterms, first midterms, they're already gone. Whatever happened, happened. Final exam, not here yet. Why are you worrying about the final exam yet? Just focus on the midterm that you don't even need to focus on all the second midterms you're going to take. Just focus on the midterm that is coming tomorrow. Then you will have enough power, patience, whatever to study. Otherwise, actually, we do experience this a lot. And especially grad students experiences this a lot. So getting just frozen or paralyzed because of this improper use of patience, saying that, oh, I haven't even written, let's say, barely written 1 chapter. There are 4 chapters ahead of me. And even this 1 chapter was so much painful. So with that paralyzing, the second chapter never starts. So a person with a sound mind should come and say that, well, first chapter, there might be a lot of typos and whatnot. Forget about it. Just sit and start working on the second chapter. That's all you are supposed to do. Don't worry about the 5th chapter either. Just do the second one. When the time comes, you'll do the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th. So this is generally the idea. And he uses the army analogy. And if you read a little bit of Tolstoy, so like War and Peace. So like 2 armies, one is there, one is here. So I have 3 pieces of my army, right flank, right wing, left wing, and the center. And also the army comes from the opposite side, again, 3 pieces. So my right side, army is right, joins my right. So, and my left side, right side is overly strong right now because enemy joined my side. On the left side, before even the enemy comes, I start wasting their bullets, saying that fire. They didn't even come, so they are just firing to no enemy. And then the enemy says, okay, the center is weakened because some of them is distributed to right, some of them is distributed to left. The enemy attacks the center and the army gets destroyed. And he's using right and left in this case because, especially in Arabic writing, since you write from right to left, right signifies past. So enemy joins you, meaning your whatever has passed is now on your side. You shouldn't be worried about it. You should be thankful that it's over. And for the left, which is the future, still you are writing, you didn't come there yet. For the future, it didn't come yet. Why are you being worried about or trying to attack tomorrow? Tomorrow is not there yet. Maybe you'll not live that long anyways. So this is why the analogy is like that.
Just maybe like a tiny tweak to your example about the midterm to make it more parallel with the text example. So imagine a student who studied really hard for the first midterm and he had very tough time, but it passed. But not only it passed, it also, gave him a lot of experience and the knowledge about the second midterm as well. But you still keep thinking about how hard it was. So your past prayers, being a good deed on your account, and you can then joining, like the army joining to your army. It's like the past troubles that you had are not troubles anymore, even a strength for you, because you've been through them.
I have a question about this, like past troubles. So whenever I think about like any past trouble, like it still pains me. And like whenever I think about anything that a hardship I went through, it still hurts me. So here the author says the trouble of yesterday or today have been transformed into mercy. The pain has gone away while the pleasure remains. So I'm having a hard time like dealing with it, because like whenever I think about hardships, yes, I have gained that experience. Yes, I have all of this knowledge, but it still hurts when I think about all of those experiences that I went through.
I guess as an additional question, so oftentimes, I think we live in a time where a lot of people have anxiety, right? There's this worry about events that have yet to come. And often the reply will be, well, if I could choose not to worry about things that haven't yet come, I would just not worry about it. So is Nursi saying here, just don't worry about it? Or what are the sort of nuances or complexities of what he's offering in this passage?
Not to give answer to any of these, but today I was reading something. I don't know where it came to, but it seems to be very relevant. In 2016, one student at Penn committed suicide. Nowadays, the family is suing Penn because student gave signs of it. Like she officially applied to Penn and also to hospital 9 times. She even gave them a date saying that after returning from visiting my family such and such day on Sunday, I'm going to commit suicide. I'm going to use sleeping pills and whatnot. So all the signs. So anyways, I was reading that news. So like in the news, it was since it's now in the court, they explicitly report what was the conversation between the girl and the doctor. So the girl, it was midterms time, and she passed the time for withdrawal. She was a student at Wharton, and she's saying that dying is easier than catching up with the classes. So this was the reason for apparently committing suicide. Like she was burned out, and she is saying that how am I going to recover? Like maybe she messed up with the first midterms and whatnot, and now she's saying that I cannot drop the classes, withdraw the classes, and then it's too hard to because finals are coming, right? So it's going to be too hard to catch up with it. So the easiest quit is committing suicide. So I guess this is in general, author is apparently applying it to the prayer, but it's in every facet of life. And this impatience is shaping our life in a so weird way. And this might be an extreme example, like committing suicide because you messed up your midterms. But here and there, because of this impatience, we mess up many things. Maybe we are not committing suicide, but take it, let's say, as a career suicide, as it would be more relevant nowadays. But the author says, let me take you somewhere it's even much, much more relevant. You are being not careful with your prayers because of this, or you're being careless. I'm being careless with my prayers because of the same impatience. So this is why it looks like, oh, impatience, or they would just say, just be patient, right? But this patience has a lot of implications in our day-to-day life. And it might be as like detrimental as committing suicide on one end. But if you look in here, abandoning my prayers is a different way of committing suicide of an eternal life, because I'm really wasting all my time here. And again, what is the reason for that? What is being my motivation for not doing the prayer? Well, like I expect to, let's say, live 60, 70, 80 years, 5 times every day, too much. Or even sometimes we look back, and if, let's say, you started praying late, you didn't pray for the, let's say, first 5, 10 years of your life where you were supposed to pray. I even messed up there. How am I going to catch up with those prayers? Now I will need to redo them. And on top of that, another, let's say, 40 years of life in front of me, too much labor. What is the outcome? This was the first thing that the author said. You think there's no outcome. You think this life is eternal. No benefit of the prayer is there. This is, so he addressed this in 1 and 2. Now in the third one, saying that this patience or impatience is your disease, and an outcome of that disease is being applied to the prayer. So he is saying that let's fix that problem of impatience.
I didn't see. Sorry.
I mean, I just had a different sort of understanding of the example given, which is that, I understood the right, the left, the center as like, different things I'm confronted with maybe on a daily basis or whatever. There's maybe my job, I got to do some sort of task, or I have to pass this exam, or some sort of thing. And maybe on the left, it's I want to acquire a car, a house. I want to, have a certain, desire certain things. In the middle, the more important thing, right, that I might not be giving value to, and prioritizing either the right or the left of, where to put my efforts. The middle that I'm forgetting might be my prayers, right? And I don't see any practical connection to, fulfilling my prayers and then acquiring the thing on the right or the left. I might focus on, passing the exam or getting, doing something for work at the cost of the center. And maybe I acquire that, but you acquire the the side position, but you give up the middle, right? You're losing a lot more than you're getting. And so that's how I interpreted like priorities.
About the past and also the futures and impatience that Yusuf was mentioning. So, if I tell you that let's pray, you would, if you understood how you are needy of this prayer, how prayer, this suits your, let's say, the pain, how prayer benefits you, and so on. If you understood this, you would say, oh yeah, let's pray. If I make it just one time. But if I tell you that let's pray, and you will need to pray your entire life. If I tell you, it suddenly becomes a burden. The same act. And you don't even know how long you will live. Like you may die next moment. But it still becomes a burden. So like I see this in myself a lot. I was, studying some stuff, and I'm enjoying studying it. But the moment I think that, I have to study it to the incoming 2 days, it becomes a burden. That's very interesting. Like when you think about it, there's no point because it's not even there. Like, and you enjoy the act. Like you go to gym, for instance, you enjoy going to gym until you injure your shoulder. You enjoy going gym, but the moment you think that, oh, I have to go to gym every like a week 3 times for 6 months. If I give you such a schedule and I say that you have to go, that amount, you will say too much. It will become burden. Even, a trekking journey. If I tell you that you have to repeat it every 2 months, you will start counting the calories for coming to, the trips. You will start, thinking about, oh, what am I going to pack? And whether my shoes would, stay with me, or should I buy a new shoes, like a pair of shoes after 5 years or not? You will start doing all these computations in your mind. And it will become a burden, although you enjoy it. So I think this is very, the human thing that author is talking about. About the past, so when you talk about, like you were referring this part of text, for the troubles of yesterday have today been transformed into mercy. And you were talking about, the bad experiences you had and so on. I guess we can tie it to there too. And I believe there's an answer to that as well in Quran. But in this text, like I was also checking the original text and so on. It seems he's specifically talking about very, the scope of prayer. And when he talks about the troubles, my understanding is that it's the troubles of prayer, like the prayer being a burden for you in past, but you've been through it. It's already done, right? It's already with you now. Like when you think about all the prayers you've been through, you have this sense of security. You have a connection with your Rabb. So this connection is with you. Like it transformed into mercy. This is how I understand it within this context. Yes, every prayer, I was thinking about the coming prayers and it became burden for me. That's a reality. But it's in the past and I've been through them. I talked to my Rabb, during all these prayers. So I have this living relationship with my Rabb now. It's a mercy for me, the past troubles that I've been through. So I guess this is what he's talking about in this, the very part of the text. But when we extrapolate this to your question, like I've been through all these bad experiences, let's say. Oh, go ahead, please.
What about like just missing a namaz, for example? There's still an experience, but still when I think about it, I don't feel happy about like
Missing a
namaz, a prayer.
okay, prayer, okay.
You can like not extrapolate it, but like keep it to
Oh,
salah as
okay,
well.
yeah. That's a good way. So I guess you can think it as, like in Quran, it says God, when they come with the, I can't remember whether it was Tawbah or Istighfar, but God, changes their bad deeds with the good ones. Not even changing them, transforms their bad deeds into good ones. So it's still the same deed. Previously, it was labeled as the bad deed, but it became a good deed. So we see this with lives of Sahaba. Most of them, may Allah forgive me, I don't mean it, but let's say not most of them, but some of them, before accepting Islam, they were doing terrible things. Umar radiallahu anhu was about to kill Prophet right before accepting the religion. After, hitting his sister and so on and so forth. And these are just, the simple stuff. They were doing terrible things. But after accepting the Islam, every time then they think about these terrible things, they became like these terrible things, experiences became a source of support for them. Like, I've been through such a transformation thanks to Islam. Now I very strongly hold on it. That's one thing. Another thing, I've been doing all these terrible things and I feel so bad. It becomes a reason, an excuse for me to say istighfar more than anyone else. I'm getting closer and closer to my Lord, quote unquote, because of these bad experiences. So there are many different ways. These are just only two ways. But there are many different ways that in your life you realize God really taking your bad deeds and making it a good deed. Because through deeds, so-called bad deed, which is in your past, and because you are ashamed of it, because you are asking for forgiveness, you realize it's taking you closer to your Rabb. And you say that, yes, this ayah is telling me truth. I witness it here. Like, it's not talking about when you die, when your book is open, God will, take all these bad deeds and say that, do you know what? I like you, so I make them good deeds. No, in this life, you say that, yes, this is true. And you hope when you die, it will happen as well. Again, like, there are many different ways, as Quran explains. These are not just, the wishes. This is how Quran explains that your bad experiences, depending on your stance in the moment, again, tying back to text, author says, look at your moment. It doesn't mean forget about your past. Who cares? It means take your past and project it to your moment and use it as a source of mercy. If you did something bad, use it as a reason to ask for forgiveness in this very moment. Then your past, this enemy, will join your army. You will be stronger. About the future, the author doesn't say, who cares about the future? Just live your moment. The author says, yes, you have anxiety, maybe to your question. You have anxiety about your future, right? But don't take it as an anxiety for future. Use it in the moment. You are afraid of something happening to you. I'll use it as an excuse to surrender your Lord. Say that I'm so weak. I cannot control my future. And I'm so afraid of, my husband becoming someone that I don't like, or my child having this disease, my wife, acting this way, and I cannot control it. You are the only one who can help me within this moment. Use the anxiety for future as a reason, as a source of strength, because you will get your strength from your Lord. Everything that takes you to your Lord is a mercy, is a strength for you. Fear, for instance. When you fear, when you're afraid of something, you are in the best mood to surrender. In a paradoxical way, it gives you strength. Because when you fear, you realize that you are needy. When you realize you are needy, you surrender to one who can satisfy your need. And the one you surrender is, if he is the all-powerful one, you are stronger than the moment that you were not afraid. So fear, anxiety makes you stronger in that sense. But if you use it in the moment,
So here author is not denying that there's hardship. Hardship is there for sure. In the past, say you were sick. I mean, he is both talking about prayer and also in general, all misfortunes and hardships, right? So maybe you were sick at some point and it was a hard period of your life. So there are two ways to take it. One way is you can take it, think about it and say that, oh, how hard days they were, and still feel pity towards yourself and get tortured with that. Sometimes we do this actually. There's a weird pleasure in having pity towards ourselves. And we think about those hard days and still feel pity towards ourselves. And somehow, although in one sense we are torturing ourselves by still saying that, oh, how hard those days were, but there's an, I don't know, masochist sort of a joy in there. I don't know if you have ever seen people like this. They complain about something that has happened to them. And you said, well, it's over. Just wake up, come to your senses. You should be happy that it's over. I mean, you've gone through it and you should be now thankful that it's no more. Somebody saved you from there. Why are you still living in that dark days? There's a reason for that. The reason is sometimes we love to be, I mean, this is a mindset for sure, to be pitied. Like you look at me and say, oh, I am so sorry for you, right? I mean, that sort of an attitude. Sometimes you feel happy for somebody being sorry for you, or even nobody else. You feel sorry for your yesterday self. And there's a joy in there. But this is wasting our energy. For that joy itself, I am wasting my energy. I mean, there are some cartoon-like cases that I have gone through, that I have seen. And maybe you have seen people around yourself as such. Then look at the mirror and see another version of it. Whenever you look at the past and you still feel pain for, oh, how hard those days were, you should tell yourself, I should tell myself that there's no point of repeating that pain, actually. Why am I doing that? It's nonsense. The reason is my ego gets some joy out of that. So the author says this shouldn't be the case. If anything, you should be thankful for now those moments not being there anymore. You are saved from there. Imagine you were tortured somewhere in some prison at some point, let's say, and you're now saved. Should you remember those hard days and get pain right now, or say that, oh, alhamdulillah, I'm saved from that torture, and enjoy your freedom more? This is why the author is taking it as enemy's rights joined your right. It is now in your favor. It makes your moments more joyful. So such an attitude is possible, but author is saying that this is a lunacy. This is not a sound mind's attitude. We do that, but we should pay attention. What is the driving force that makes me do this nonsensical thing? And I believe it is about humans' joy being, we get joy sometimes from being pitied by others. Like the small baby hits head somewhere and you say, oh, come, my dear Ali, and whatever. I mean, there's a joy in there. My mom is just very nicely hugging me. I mean, you know that it's not painful anymore, and he is now enjoying mom hugging him. So this feeling pitied is having a joy in it. Even if we grow up, sometimes this might be sticking there. And I pity my yesterday because of that joy, but this is not a sensible thing, is author saying, for the past side of it. I don't know if that makes sense.
And I guess just my comment of something else, but just based on what Brother Yusuf said, that need, it can be sort of directioned into a sort of egoistic state of being. But if that need is turned towards the creator, it can be a sort of way of soliciting divine mercy and compassion, right? Because the baby solicits divine compassion from the mother, and solicitations of, or expressions of trying to be pitiful in one sense or another, are asking for others to validate you or show compassion in one sense. So I guess it's about how we use that feeling. But I wanted to just go back to the text here, and I think someone maybe highlighted this sentence, but I wanted to highlight it again, of in the second paragraph where he says, the difficulty has been turned into blessings and the hardship into reward, in which case you should not feel wearied at it, but make a serious effort to continue with a new eagerness and fresh enthusiasm. In one sense, you know, like this is the case whenever we look at our lives in any facet, right? You finish middle school. When you're in high school, you're like, oh, I finished middle school. When you're in college, you know that high school is finished. When you finish college, whenever you look back at some difficult period in your life, there's a sense of ease that accompanies that, looking back at it, knowing that, you know, it wasn't a permanent state of being that you were placed in. It wasn't a permanent situation that you were placed in. And I guess reflection, being able to recollect that, and in the process of recollection, experience the reward or the blessing of it, becomes a sort of drive for whenever I'm placed into a new situation of difficulty, right? And I'm not talking specifically just for the prayers, but more in general here. I can then reason about the situation that I'm placed here and say, oh, there's divine intentionality here. And also that the difficulty that that I might be experiencing right now will later on be a means of pleasure that I can, you know, look back upon. So I guess even with the prayers, like it's not anything different than everything else that we do in our lives. You know, we go through the education system one grade at a time. We go through work days one day at a time. But also I wanted to highlight a point that was made by Sister Zaha 2 weeks ago, of if I feel the need for something, it becomes less of a burden, right? And maybe this goes back to the first warning that Imam Nursi writes about here. But if I see prayers as being a prescription for me, right, then it becomes much less burdensome and much more welcome. Rather than like, oh, a pill I have to take every day. It's like, oh, this is like something specifically curated for me that will bring me enjoyment and pleasure in my everyday for the rest of my life. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Brother Abdurrahman has a comment.
I wanted to make a further comment on this idea of the troubles of yesterday have today been transformed into mercy. And then later on, Nursi is talking about how you have been charged with in my impatient soul, you have been charged with patience in 3 respects: patience in worship, patience in refraining from sin, and patience in face of disaster. And I was just trying to think of where's the connection here between patience and then my past and my future. And I think the only way I can be patient in the face of a disaster or in face of sin or in face of worship is if I'm able to transform my past into mercy, or I can see mercy can be one of the names. There can be other names, but if I go through a hardship and then I come out of that hardship and I see while I was going through it, you know, it was extremely difficult for me, but then after I got out, I learned so much from this, or there was a part of me which needed to be broken, or that had this wrong conviction which needed to be broken. And this hardship really stress, that pressure there, and it fixed me. And now I see it was so difficult, but there was so much mercy in that difficulty for me. I see there was education there. I see that there was some intentionality there. I see that, if I could go back, I'm like, yeah, I should go through it again because I needed that. And then I could think of even other things in my life. If I'm able to transform those difficulties that I go through into mercy, seeing the mercy, whether that's the education in it, or seeing, oh, I am truly needy, I made a mistake, I can't, like, I understand that I am in need of a sustainer, like somehow going through my past history and making mercy, then when I face a new disaster that I can't see the mercy of immediately, I can say, but I know in my past, it has always transformed into mercy. So I can be patient here. Like, that's the connection with patience that I see that Nursi is making. However, if I can't transform my past into mercy, if all my previous prayers, thinking now on the topic of prayer, like, do I see my previous prayers as a mercy? Do I see them as, what do I see them as? Are they just, they're almost like maybe just gray, like nothing for me? Then when I go look at my next prayer, potentially I don't have my previous prayers as support for me because I haven't maybe contemplated on what prayer actually means, or how it has an effect on my life, or what it is contributing to me. Is there mercy in there? But if I can then go and, oh, I've been doing this thing which has been somehow daily been putting me in front of my creator in some way, and it has been somehow giving me some support, then I can see the mercy of it, how it's kind of keeping me, giving me some strength, like every day somehow. Then I can see, oh, then I will continue with this worship that maybe at that moment I don't feel like the need for, or at that moment I'm kind of like busy with other things. I'm like, oh, I don't feel like doing it. So I can say, no, this is something that's very vital and important for me. Again, I think there's like this emphasis Nursi is making on patience here, where patience is not just blind faith, or it's not just ignoring the difficulty of it. It's rather there's a foundation of support in realizing that the one who had all the previous hardships you went through, you saw mercy in them. So this one, there must also be mercy, but you need some sort of to wait to see it, or you need some sort of like a patience to be able to actually see that mercy. It might not be immediately recognizable.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the third warning? I suppose we can move on to the fourth warning if no one has any questions or comments then. Do you want to read the fourth warning?
Fourth warning. O my foolish soul, is this duty of worship without result, and is its recompense little that it causes you weariness? Whereas if someone was to give you a little money or to intimidate you, he could make you work till evening, and you would work without slacking. So is it that the prescribed prayers which are without result, which in this guest house of the world are sustenance and wealth for your impotent and weak heart, and in your grave, which will be a certain dwelling place for you, sustenance and light, and at the resurrection, when you will anyway be judged, a document and patent, and on the bridge of Sirat, over which you are bound to pass, a light and a mount, are their recompense little? Someone promises you a present worth 100 liras and makes you work for 100 days. You trust the man who may go back on his word and work without slacking. So if one for whom the breaking of a promise is impossible promises you recompense like paradise and a gift like eternal happiness, and employs you for a very short time in a very agreeable duty, if you do not perform that service, or you act accusingly towards his promise, or slight his gift by performing it unwillingly, like someone forced to work, or by being bored, or by working in half-hearted fashion, you will deserve a severe reprimand and awesome punishment. Have you not thought of this? Although you serve without flagging in the heaviest work in this world out of fear of imprisonment, does the fear of an internal incarceration like hell not fill you with enthusiasm for a truly light and agreeable act of service?
Thank you. Any initial comments or questions?
Assalamualaikum everybody, Syra here. Jazakallah khair for the conversation. I think when I hear and my sister read it and read this particular warning, there are a lot of back in the day when Sayyid Nursi wrote it, probably half a century or so ago or more. What does it mean when the reference is constantly to the guest house, right? This world, and then the reminder for the resurrection and grave, a certain time period where we'll for sure be dwelling. And so the mention of light is very reassuring, because if we read Quran's certain ayats where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says many times that people who are going to have their light in front of them because of who they were when they were in dunya and how they lived their life. Their light will guide them on Pul Sirat also, and that their light is going to be like a sign of their believinghood, that they were obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that whatever they were given in this guest house as means to live by, sustenance, wealth, health, that's actually a reminder basically that one day it's going to be gone. It's not forever. Instead, the eternal and the one that is lasting, that is going to replace it, given the fact that a person is going to be able to have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and gain um, uh, that particular uh, uh, um, I would say a position or status in the hereafter. So where he goes down and makes a comparison between so if one for whom the breaking of a promise is impossible promises you recompense like paradise and a gift like eternal happiness, and employs you for a very short time in a very agreeable duty, if you do not perform that service, or you act accusingly towards his promise or slight um, his gift, by performing it unwillingly, like someone forced to work, or by being bored, or by working in half-hearted fashion, you will deserve a severe reprimand and awesome punishment. So for me, this particularly speaking to Muslim brothers and sisters mean, why are we distinct in a world filled with all kinds of temptations, and our own brothers and sisters, Muslims, often being seen in compromised situation? Maybe perhaps we ourselves are no better, have had in the past situations where deliberately we missed a prayer, deliberately we broke somebody's heart, deliberately we did not fulfill Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands in his life, makes us recognize that time is running out, and the opportunity to make good on this promise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Um, that time period is being lost. Then I think the orientation is towards the upper part of the fourth warning, which is, "O my foolish soul, is this duty of worship without result?" Like, don't despair in it, because Allah's promise, God's promise is certain. He says that with certitude that, if you call upon me, I hear you. If you come back to me sincerely repenting, I'll forgive you. If you are committed to being a sure faith person, I'm going to support you. I'm going to protect you. You may die, but then your reward in the eternal life is certain. You may suffer a lot of trials, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I am unforgetful of you, or forgetful of you or punishing you, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Um, and then in Surah Doha, that I haven't forgotten you and I'm not upset with you. But Allah Ta'ala throughout Quran reminds people, because of his duality and omnipotence, that he's the giver and he's also the taker. He's the merciful and he's also the punisher. And so I think when we see that in the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's qualities, attributes, and divine all powerfulness, that only and only belongs to him. Then the middle part of this warning makes sense to me, which is so is it that the prescribed prayers are without result, which in the guest house of the world are sustenance and wealth for your impotent and weak heart, and in your grave, which will be a certain dwelling place for you, sustenance and light. And at the resurrection, when you will be anyway judged, a document and a patent, and on the bridge of Sirat, over which you are bound to pass, a light and a mount. So, again, ending this reflection with the thought process that in this morning, I think he's scaffolding both the admonition that don't be forgetful of your duty towards Allah Ta'ala, but he's also saying, like to have the icing on the cake, don't do it as if you are burdened to do it. I think he's hinting at free will, to be fully used as free will out of your own volition, out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, excelling with khushu, offering prayer, and not thinking of it as a burden or something boring to just perform for the sake of performing, but actually really realize the benefits of it and immerse yourself with a sense of existence without it is basically devoid of any pleasure from a divine perspective. Because if you're not connecting with Him full heartedly, then you are not necessarily making good on this provision that He has given you. You are denying it and you are taking it for granted, or you are making it unimportant. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us always have the khushu that is needed in our prayers, and we keep on perfecting it in all areas of our life, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Excuse me, we can't hear anything. The host is muted.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. I was just talking about, how these examples that author gives about somebody promising you 100 lira and making you work 100 days. This is about our work life, that we work 30 days with no questioning. And we believe that the promise that we are paid our salary after 30 days. And I was saying that now it's even more interesting that there's this thing called love for your job. So our brother Zarar, for instance, is a great example. Thank you for putting yourself in spot, Zarar, that you work for a company, quote unquote, so prestigious, like it makes you work like this sweatshop labor. But you say that, oh, no, I'm so happy because, there's this prestige coming with this company. It will be great for my CV. I love the technology that we develop and so on. And you're not even paid half of the money that the others are paid. So it's so interesting when you look at, ourselves. An author says, on the contrary, at least this is the claim, again, we should discuss, that with the prayer, you get your payment right in the moment. And it is so big of a payment compared to your burden. It's nothing, author says. The burden is nothing compared to the payment you get. So it's just the opposite, but we are happily doing the silly one, working for a promise or like made up names, the prestige of the company or the love of the technology, whatever. But you don't want to work when the pay is there and it's so big of a pay. Would you like to add anything, Zara?
I mean, I really do love the technology.
Sorry, we couldn't hear you, Zara.
I mean, I guess in terms of honestly, the only difference that I can immediately relate to is, I guess, it's sort of instant gratification that we do get. Like, I mean, yes, you pray and then you do feel good, but also very bad with environments. Like, I do, there's a feeling of goodness. Obviously, it is put into me really clear. But then I've also been
Zara, your Wi-Fi is not
experiencing in
good.
society that
Type your message out and we can read it for you.
Let me put it in a more human way. Oh, Zara, we were not able to hear you. Your sound was breaking. So if you don't mind, please type your comment and please tell your boss to, pay a little bit more so that you get better Wi-Fi.
I think that analogy makes sense, but yes, we need to question, is really prayer, because the author is saying that is the duty of worship without result. So is there really that immediate payment? Because the author is saying that the prayer is, in this guest house of the world are sustenance and wealth for your impotent and weak heart. So author is claiming that in this world, as you are praying, your heart is getting some payment, some satisfaction. And says, in your grave, which will be a certain dwelling place for you, sustenance and light. So is this something about future? Like in the grave, prayer is going to be sustenance and light. So how shall I relate to that? And at the resurrection, when you will anyway be judged, a document and patent, like once you get there, you will show that, oh, I did the prayer. And then on the bridge of Surat, over which you're bound to pass, it's a light and a mount. In the original text, he uses the word burak, like the mount that the messenger, the prophet, took as he was going to the ascension. So how can we confirm these? Yes, the examples make sense. Let's say Zarar is relying on Elon Musk that he's going to pay him this little amount of money, however much it is, at the end of the month. But I mean, the guy has been paying. This is why Zarar is trusting him. Otherwise, if it was a shady startup, which it is a little more than that, but because of the track record of the guy at least doing the payments on time, Zarar went all the way from here to California for his labor camp. So how about our Creator? What is the evidence that he makes the payment? Yes, I mean, yeah, I am a Muslim. I believe that God never breaks his promise and whatever. But what is the evidence for you that you would say, no, I am sure my Creator never breaks his promise? It's not hearsay. I am sure he never breaks his promise. And here is my evidence. So how can we say that to support others' claim here? Because the example makes perfect sense. I think this is the only missing piece in the puzzle to see those examples and evidences from our life to support these. Once we do that, we'll be good. Ali is getting knife. Has anybody been to grave? Have you seen that it's a light in the grave? Did anybody pass Sirat yet? Like, has it been a burak? Has your prayer been a burak on the Sirat, the bridge? Or resurrection? Have you seen resurrection? Or have you experienced any sort of resurrection so that you will say, oh, prayer has been a document, like a proof of something for me when I was being resurrected? Do you have any clue of that in your life? So that you would say, yeah, of course, this is right there. He has been keeping his promise. Therefore, willingly and lovingly, I will keep working for his company.
I would say,
Where do you work from?
sorry. No, it's the opposite. Alhamdulillah. I would say that for me, there was a time where I was dead, right? And then there was a time where I was resurrected. And the difference between the two is that when I was dead, I wasn't praying. And when I was resurrected, I was praying. And so the prayer itself is a mark of the resurrection itself, right? And maybe what's important is what led to the resurrection, right? I guess, I don't know, seeking something. And the prayer is a proof of, the fulfillment of what was found.
I just wanted to, just reading this reminded me of Nursi has a different place where he talks about the 5 prayers. And then he says, the 5 prayers, they can resemble different parts of your life. I think we even covered it in one of these Friday discussions, but, it's like the Zuhr prayer is like the start of maybe your life or the start of your day. And then Asr is like kind of going to the end, Maghrib, like your death, and then your resurrection or the revival. So like kind of even in the 5 daily prayers, you see that there's kind of different phases of your life that are kind of being represented there. And then if I can kind of make an analogy with here, let's say, which in the guest house of the world are sustenance. So I think while I'm living, I can experience this. And then it says, and in your grave, yeah, I haven't physically died. I'm not in my grave, but let's say I have the graves of my experiences. There could be phases of my life, phases of the day where I feel like I'm in the grave, like I'm at my workplace and I feel constricted in my grave due to some certain anxieties. I can experience in those cases where prayer might, come to me and I feel some relief. So I guess it's maybe a rare case that it happens where I feel like that, but it can be some sort of evidence, I suppose. And then it can be a certain dwelling place for you, and your resurrection, it says. I guess like once you are in the grave, you're being constricted, and then after prayer, maybe you find some relief, you feel some resurrection. So I think there can be analogies basically with my life where prayer comes to me in certain phases. And if I give prayer its due and I kind of try to understand why I'm praying and the reasoning behind praying and try to maybe even receive whatever light there is in prayer, then I can find these evidences that Nursi is listing in my life where I now know that this employer or this creator will actually is true to his word, and that prayer is actually, I will be paid at the end of the month, or I will get that payment because I feel that I am getting it. Just trying to paint some sort of analogy.
I just have a question. And this might take me some time to like actually explain this, but I was thinking about so we're trying to understand what's the immediate reward that we can use to say, yes, this is something that I need to do continuously, because something that the light and sustenance that you have in your eternal dwelling place, it's much like we tend to think of it as far away in the future, right? So, but when we asked what's the reward, aren't we reducing prayer down to something that's more transactional? Like I pray and I get a reward, as opposed to in the second warning, when we talk about prayer as, analogous to water and air. Water and air, we can't, like the reward itself is life. If you think of life as a reward, we can't ask the same two questions when we think of it as like as a necessity, as opposed to something I do just so I get a reward. In that case, I have these two questions sort of like fighting with each other. How do we understand prayer itself from this perspective?
So if I'm getting it right, you're saying that one, we say prayer is a need that we desperately have. And so when we pray, it's already satisfying this need. And now we're talking about it as if it's a transaction. We pray without any need and we get reward. How they come like a kind of, agree these two aspects. So maybe one example, I don't know if it makes sense or not. So a car, for instance, needs gasoline, right? And when you put the gasoline on the car, in the car, it starts working. So there's a need, it's satisfied. You don't think the car getting any pleasure when you put the gasoline, right? It's just a need and it is satisfied. In your case, though, you need food. You put some food in your mouth. It satisfies the need and you can survive. But at the same time, isn't it that strange? Like you have this tongue, it has these receptors for taste and so on. You get also a reward of these action. Like it doesn't make sense. You already need it, even if there was no taste, no pleasure, you would probably, that's at least what an evolutionary perspective would suggest. You would just take it and put it into your mouth. It's a need, like putting a gasoline into a car. But at the same time, you are paid kind of like extra with the taste. So I guess it can be taken in a similar way. The prayer is a need. When you don't do it, you deprive yourself something very fundamental, very important. But at the same time, when you do it, it also comes with multiple payments as well. Like it's like from our perspective, when you do something like a tiring or the burdensome, we expect something in return, even if we need it for ourselves. This is a human let's say, at least the perspective, an author says you get this payment. The prayer is your need, but still you get extra payments on top of it. Maybe.
And that's, I'll just follow up with what Abdurrahman was saying. So for the part at the bridge of Sirat, it's going to be a burak, is what the author is saying in here. And this seems to be in alignment with at least the word use of burak. Prophet was mentioning that after the ascension, he said that 5 daily prayers are obligatory to you. And this is going to be your miraj, your ascension. And ascension happens with a burak. So it's very interesting. Author is using the same terminology. So what does that mean? How can I make sense of that? Before dying, before being resurrected, before passing through the bridge itself, how can I relate to that? It's like poetically, it sounds nice, but what does it really mean? But if we pay attention to how bridge of Sirat was described by the messenger, like it's for the believer, it is wide. For the unbeliever, it's going to be very narrow, very sharp. So, and by passing through that bridge, you get to the paradise. Otherwise, you fall into the hell. So it's very interesting of a depiction. Okay. So maybe it's gone. So actually, we are living on that. As of now, we are passing through that bridge. Every choice we are going through is passing through that bridge. So am I going to make, like in life, multiple, any occasion is introduced to you and multiple choices are introduced to you. Which one am I going to choose? Am I going to choose the one that my creator taught me to and expect me to choose? Or I'm going to deny that answer that was taught to me by my creator, by the messenger and the guided people. But I would say, no, I'll go with my wishes and desires only. That's another choice. So this is how our life is going, really. All those branches are happening. So life is going through that bridge. So how can I make that bridge, that journey very fast, very quick? How could it be that my prayer is going to make passing through that bridge very quick? So I'm also going to bring something from other parts of how Nursi is explaining, but I'll just explain you what I understood out of it. Like sometimes, as again Abdurrahman was mentioning, something bad is happening in life, or sometimes something good is happening in life. And then if it is bad, you're saying that, oh, somebody hit my car, or a tree fell on my car, something bad happened. So it's happening in here. Let's say I am on the left end of the bridge. So where did this bridge going to take me to? Shall I fall to the hell saying that, oh, it's by chance? Or that drunk guy, he did it. It's meaningless, waste of resources and everything. And I start cursing. I fell into hell and I burned. Because like uselessly, pointlessly, my wealth just disappeared or my health disappeared and it hurts. So I couldn't pass through the bridge. I fell off the bridge and I got burned really. You start tasting the unpleasantness of this improper interpretation of what breaking of that car really meant. But the other alternative is, as Abdurrahman was suggesting, seeing the wisdom and the purpose behind what that accident was. And this is where it's being exemplified as going into paradise. You start seeing the wisdom and purpose and mercy in your car being broken. This is going to paradise and passing the bridge successfully. But the question is, how am I going to pass the bridge successfully? How do I know to come up with the proper interpretation of, or true understanding of, what was the message behind my car being crushed under a tree, or some random drunk guy coming and hitting my car? Seems to be coming out of the blue. Seeing wisdom or seeing the will of the creator behind the scenes would make sense, but I do not see that. How can I see that? Now the author is saying that prayer is going to make you pass through that bridge like Burak, very rapidly. Let me give you one example. I will come back to here. When your mom hugs you, immediately you know that your mom loves you. But if some random person from the street comes and hugs you, what would you think? Like you would be, whoa, what's going on here? Like, for that person to convince you that that person is your, like, appreciating you, having mercy towards you, loving you, a good amount of effort needs to be taken, right? But between you and your mother, there had been developed this sense of mercy over the years. Now, just a sign of mercy is enough for you to know that, oh, my mom loves me. You don't need this long explanation or anything. Just a hug makes it very clear. Or sometimes from just the light in your mother's eyes, you know whether she's happy, upset, satisfied, not satisfied, right? So prayer, now coming back to, so the author is suggesting that prayer is going to become your Burak. Burak means, as in the hadith, it's explained, you get on that mount, one step of that Burak is here, the next one is where the horizon is. So it's so fastly going from one place to the other, right? In the case of your relationship with your mother, with just a hug, you immediately know she loves you. Like a long distance, immediately you take that distance. How come prayer can do that? So the author is suggesting that prayer is your training, because by prayer, you are realizing you're needy, somebody is taking care of you, and now you are responding back to this one who has been taking care of you. As I keep going through that training in my life, as it becomes my Burak, something good or bad happens in my life. It's going to become like my mom hugging me. It's going to make me easier to arrive, or very fast to arrive from whatever is happening to the conclusion. Because now I am living in a way of very conscious togetherness with my creator. Like, how come you were so sure of your mother's love? Because you have been consciously interacting with your mother for how many years? And you know she loves you, she cares about you. When she hugs you, you immediately know she loves you. So it's like with a Burak, it's super fast. Prayer makes this or provides this as you are going through the bridge. And we are going through bridges, multiple bridges of Sirat in every choice that we are expected to go through. And if I go through the training of prayer, then it becomes this consciousness that from, let's say, the tree falling top of my car to the conclusion of my creator loves me would become a faster passage rather than a long and tedious journey. What was the point? What was the point? What was the point? No. Once, to the extent that I develop this sense of prayer or give the due diligence, its due of the prayer, then it's going to become my Burak, which means in the speed of lightning, because Burak comes from Berk, like the speed of lightning, you start from argument to the conclusion immediately. You don't need to go through long journeys. So this is why, and on the bridge of Sirat over which you are bound to pass, a light and a mount, indeed prayer is such a thing, or would become such a thing to the extent that I invest on my prayer.
Jazakallah for your comment. We'll continue with the fourth warning, inshallah, in the next week. सुब्हानक ला इल्म लना इल्ला मा अल्लमतना इन्नका अंतल अलीमुल हकीम व आखिर वदाना व अनिल हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन। जज़ाकल्लाह खैर।